If you're divorcing a narcissist, there's something very important you need to understand about court. The judge is not sitting there trying to figure out who the narcissist is. They're not diagnosing personality disorders. They're not watching your case thinking, who suffered more emotionally? They're watching something much more specific than that. And if you misunderstand what the court is actually paying attention to, you can unintentionally damage your own credibility, even when you're telling the truth. So today, I want to talk about what judges actually notice in high conflict divorce cases, especially when one person is narcissistic. Because understanding this can completely change the way you move through your divorce. Let's break this down into 3 things. First, what courts are actually evaluating. Second, the biggest mistakes emotionally overwhelmed people make in court. And third, how to create contrast in a way that strengthens your credibility instead of weakening it. So first, what are judges actually looking at? Because most women assume, if I can just explain what he's really like, the court will understand. But that's not usually how this works. The court is not designed to evaluate emotional pain. It's designed to evaluate behavior, credibility, consistency, compliance, and decision-making. Judges are looking for patterns. Who follows court orders? Who communicates reasonably? Who escalates conflict? Who appears emotionally regulated? Who looks child-focused? Who looks solution-oriented? That's what they notice. And honestly, this is one of the hardest shifts for women who are divorcing narcissists. Because you're entering court carrying years of emotional exhaustion, manipulation, gaslighting, and confusion. You want the court to finally see what you've lived through. But the more emotionally driven your presentation becomes, the harder it can be for the court to separate the chaos from the facts. This is one of the biggest areas I help clients understand because many women walk into the court thinking, I need to tell my whole story. But court is not therapy. Court is about relevance, credibility, and regulation under pressure. Those are very different things. So now let's talk about the second piece. The biggest mistakes emotionally overwhelmed people make in court. I say this compassionately because I made many of these same mistakes during my own divorce. One of the biggest mistakes is over-explaining. You feel falsely accused, misrepresented, attacked. So naturally, you want to defend yourself. You want to correct every lie, clarify every distortion, explain every detail. But what often happens is this. The more emotionally reactive you become, the less persuasive you appear, even when you're right. Narcissists understand this dynamic very well. They often stay calm externally while provoking emotional reactions internally. That contrast can become very confusing in court if you don't understand what's happening. I remember in my own divorce, my ex would file motions filled with ridiculous accusations. At one point, he claimed I didn't need temporary support because I had re-landscaped my entire property. But what had I actually done? I bought 2 small begonia plants for the front door of my house. That was it. But instead of letting the absurdity speak for itself, I went into total defense mode. My attorney responded aggressively. We addressed it point by point. I emotionally reacted to how unfair and ridiculous it felt. Looking back now, I can see something so much more clearly. The stronger move for me would have been restraint. Let him make the ridiculous accusations, then calmly explain the truth if asked. Because emotionally over-defending yourself can unintentionally make weak accusations feel bigger than they actually are. Many women do this without even realizing it. Another mistake is assuming the judge sees all the emotional subtext that you see. You know the history, you know the manipulation, you know the patterns. The judges are seeing a snapshot, just moments, interactions, your behavior under stress. That's why emotional regulation matters so much. Not because you shouldn't have emotions, but because court is evaluating how you function while emotionally pressured. And honestly, this is where many women benefit enormously from support. Because knowing what to do intellectually and being able to stay regulated in real time are two very different things. A huge part of my coaching is helping women prepare emotionally for court so they don't unintentionally undermine their own credibility while trying to defend themselves. Now, let's talk about the third piece. How do you actually create contrast in court? Because this is one of the most important concepts in high conflict divorce. You do not create contrast by announcing, he's a narcissist, he's abusive, he's manipulative. You create contrast behaviorally, quietly, consistently, over time. You show up prepared. You follow court orders, you communicate calmly, you provide documentation, you stay focused on outcomes instead of emotional warfare. And over time, the contrast becomes visible. Not because you forced the court to see it, but because the patterns reveal themselves. That's the shift. And honestly, many narcissists struggle with this over time because they feel entitled to bend the rules, ignore boundaries, delay processes, or emotionally escalate situations. Meanwhile, your steadiness becomes more and more credible. And this matters with children too, because courts are watching who's emotionally safer, who's more stable, who can support the child's relationship with the other parent, who appears focused on the child instead of revenge. These things matter enormously. So, if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Judges are not just listening to your words, they're watching your behavior under pressure. And in high conflict divorce, emotional regulation is not weakness, it is credibility. One of the biggest shifts you can make is moving from, I need to prove how bad he is, to, I need to consistently show who I am. That's where your power is. If this is something you're facing and you'd like support navigating it strategically, you can book a breakthrough call with me. There's a link in the description below where you can get right on my calendar. And if this resonated with you, I'd really encourage you to watch my video called The Narcissist Wants You Emotionally Exhausted. Because once you understand how emotional depletion affects your credibility, your judgment, and your decision making, the entire court dynamic starts to make much more sense. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And remember, you don't have to figure this out alone.